Welcome to Leaders Lead Podcast. Are you ready to conquer your challenges and achieve greatness? Join us as we dive into inspirational stories of industry leaders who have overcome adversity and reached new heights. Get ready for electrifying insights and captivating conversations that will ignite your passions for success. This is your go-to show for empowerment, growth, and leadership. Buckle up. Leaders Lead Podcast is here to take you on a transformational ride.
We'll jump back into your episode in a minute, but first let me ask you something. Are you great at what you do, but it still feels like no one really sees you as the go-to expert in your space? You're showing up, maybe putting out content, speaking on a few podcasts, but the visibility, the growth, the income, it still feels out of reach. That's exactly why I created the Experts Blueprint. It's a step-by-step system that I use to help coaches, consultants, and purpose-driven experts finally get visible, grow your loyal audience, and turn their message into income. Inside, I'll show you how to craft your story so people actually remember it, build a platform that works for you 24/7, and create content that builds trust and moves people into action. If you're ready to stop being overlooked and start getting the recognition, the results that you deserve, join the waitlist by emailing me at info@TonyTaylorInspires.com. Let's build something real. Let's get you seen. Welcome back to your episode. Hey, welcome, my friends. Welcome to Leaders Lead the Podcast. I am super excited. I have a guest today, one of my new dear friends, Dave Champagne from Castle Realty. I invited Dave to the show, not just because of the amazing things that he's doing in real estate, but the amazing things that he's doing in life. And of course, with this new direction, with the podcast, that's where we're all about. We're about not just leading other people, but leading ourselves. And I'm really excited about this guest. What's up, Dave?
Hey, Tony. Well, I'm happy to be here. I'm honored that you asked me to come on your podcast. I feel I might have some things to offer, and I always enjoy talking to you. So I'm happy to be here.
You're so humble, man. You feel like you got some things that you can share to help other people, man. I there's one thing, when I met you, I was really inspired by you, especially like with some things that you shared, and there was some commonalities that you and I had that we didn't talk about. But you know how like you meet somebody and they just leave that lasting impression and lasting lessons without even teaching them to you? That's kind of how you were to me. And I'm just like, man, I would love to, really get to know you further. And like I told you before, every time I have a conversation with somebody like amazing like yourself, I'm always like, oh man, I wish that conversation was recorded. So that's why we're here, because, we want to educate the audience. And just to start off, tell me a little bit about you, Dave.
Man, summing me up in a couple of sentences. Well, I've got a pretty interesting balance in my life of kind of business pursuits and spiritual pursuits ever since I was about 20. I grew up in a family business where my mom was an entrepreneur, and I was she was a role model for me because she taught me how to love work. We had a retail business, and I'd see her stocking shelves and sweeping the floor. I'm like, you got like a bunch of people to do that. And she'd say, this is my favorite part. And there was honor in work, and there was work ethic, and there was, all of us kids worked in the family business. That's rare these days. And I was glad to be a part of that, tail end of her generation of people that just worked hard, and that's all they knew. She was interviewed a few times, about the statement of women in business. And her response was, the statement was, I was feeding my family and I didn't have any other options. She wasn't college educated. She didn't have a lot of marketable skills, but she could work hard. And I mean, that's selling her short. She's very smart and just a magnet for people. She loved talking to the customers. I mean, she really became friends with most of her customers. So I got to witness that growing up. And I think that informed me about who I wanted to be as an adult. And so I dabbled in real estate until I moved out here to Washington, eventually finding my way back into real estate. I did all the odd jobs. I was mowed lawns and worked for builders and, any bit of work I could get. But eventually I found my way back to what I was naturally good at. So the entrepreneurial flashed. My mom and dad were both entrepreneurs. And I didn't really know any different. I think I worked at a Foot Locker for 2 weeks and realized, I don't think I'm fit for working for other people.
Mm-hmm.
There was kind of not that I didn't mind the work, but I would show up and say, how can we make things better? And most people were like, the hell are you talking about? Let's just get through the day and go home.
Get through your damn checklist.
It's not the environment for me. I've been involved with organizations and groups and boards, and I always find myself the one speaking too loud too often. And that's not true. That's just my internal dialogue there. Speaking too much too often, trying to make things better with people who don't always want to make things better. So having my own real estate company is kind of my way of saying, well, that's what we're going to do. And you're welcome to stay or you're welcome to go. But this organization is for people who want to make things better, that aren't okay with the status quo, while still being okay with who they are, without, having to get down into the nothing's good enough or being a perfectionist. So I think that my journey in real estate has reflected both my entrepreneurial upbringing of wanting to refine, make things better and grow, and my spiritual component. And my mom was really into different spiritual teachings when I was a teenager, and I was into all the things she was. Again, another great influence of my mom. And so as I started to grow my spiritual journey and go to schools and read books and initiations and ceremonies, and that's been a component of my life, again, since I was about 18 years old, mm-hmm. that to me, the spiritual life and the business world were just always connected under the surface. And I didn't talk about it for a long time with my clients or my agents or my assistants or whoever I had working with me. I just felt like, the spiritual conversation is for outside the workplace, just like political conversations are for outside the workplace. Mm-hmm. Again, not too long ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, I stopped playing small. And I said, my beliefs, my spiritual education, the teachings I've exposed myself to shape who I am. And why would I keep that from someone? I'm not making anyone believe what I believe or do what I do. They can believe whatever they want and they can have their own journey. I think that's important. But I guess I got to a point in my life where I stopped caring if it sounded weird to people. I'm here to share my journey. And if that inspires anyone else, great. And if it doesn't, I don't have to hide in the closet, so to speak. Yeah. And that's kind of been the way it's been for 3 years. And that's 3 out of the 32 years I've been in real estate, or the 25 years since I started my company. It's only been these last few years that I just said, what am I waiting for? Who am I hiding from? And what do I have to be ashamed of? Nothing. I have only things to be proud of, the work I've done, and sharing that and encouraging others to partake of my experiences, the good ones and the bad ones. I mean, I'd love it if I could spare someone the mistakes and the missteps, but people are going to make mistakes and missteps. Mm-hmm. What I think I share, what I think the real strength I bring to the conversation in my team is how I dealt with my mistakes and missteps. Not trying to keep them from making them, because I can't, but in showing them that mistakes, missteps, and failures are a huge strength if you're willing to look.
Yeah, you said something that stuck out to me as far as you being on boards and you doing stuff in the community. And oftentimes you speaking out, even if it's against the grain, something that our listeners and viewers go through. And I know this because I get emails and messages from them all the time about this subject. What helps you be able to speak up and speak out, even though you might have that inner voice in your head saying, shut up, Dave?
That's a good question. I think there were times, to be honest, where I was argumentative for the sake of being right. I experienced that with my family growing up. I had three older sisters and my mom. And so I was like the one that no one took seriously. So I would sometimes demand to be heard. And I was a good arguer, clever, and I could win arguments. And I found that was an identity for myself. Also, humor and being entertaining. I mean, I could disarm them and get them to listen to me. So in my family of origin, I learned these skills. So out in the adult world, yeah, there are times, and I look back now on some of the times I stood up to correct people and show them the error of their ways. And I can see a lot of ego that had been involved. But then I went through a phase of telling myself to shut up and sit down and just listen and don't be a know-it-all and don't be the center of attention and don't be the bull in the china shop. And as much as I tried to resist that, something would come up in me. And if I heard something that I didn't think was right, if I saw something that wasn't, a direction that we were heading to a cliff, or this was a bad idea and more thought needs to be put in this. I started to trust myself over the years that this isn't ego. This is spirit expressing itself. And I am different than you, and I'm different than the people on the board, and I'm different than the people I work with and work for, and the people that work for me. I'm different than everybody else, uniquely my own expression. And to deny that expression is a sin in every sense of the word. So I started to just remind myself, that is who you are. You are the person who will raise your hand and ask the awkward question, or make things uncomfortable sometimes. I mean, that's never my intention. My intention is unity and making everyone feel included and never making people wrong. But hey, have you thought of this? I think I've gotten better and better at it over the years because I've taken my ego out of it and let it be an expression of my true self, which doesn't sound egotistic at all. But it's true.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. I love that, man. And I've been in and I ask you that because I've been in those situations where, people are saying stuff where they have ideas that we're going into a direction where you could just tell there hasn't been a lot of thought put into things, but it's going to affect a lot of people. And, kind of just like you said, I'm different. I have different ideas, different opinions. And this is why I'm here. So I'm going to raise my hand and I'm going to say how I feel. And there's no ego involved because it's for the betterment of the team. I love how you said that. I was also curious, what inspired you to actually get into real estate, and what's kept you passionate about it after 32 years? I mean, that's a long time.
And that's a good question. And there's a surface answer and a much deeper answer. The surface
Let's go
answer
deep, baby.
On the surface, my dad was in real estate. My mom and dad were in the horse business, but eventually he saw that buying horse farms or listing horse farms and dividing them up and selling them, development. Now, I wasn't big into development, but I did follow a little bit my dad's footsteps. I think what really made the difference was right out of high school, my sister and brother-in-law had a small real estate company up above my mother's retail store.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was looking forward to growing up into a different business. So I got a real estate license. Now, I was young. I was 18. I dabbled in real estate, mortgages, title work. So I got the basics, but I really wasn't settled enough to dig down and grow a business. I was just too young and, all over the place. So like I said, I did a lot of menial restaurant work and landscaping and working with that builder. And I had moved out to Washington, and I met a lady who I did lawn care work. She was a real estate agent, and I did lawn care work for her listings. And then I got into advertising for 5 minutes, and she advertised with me. And she said, look, I think you're great. Why don't I hire you as a real estate assistant? Because I know that you had been in real estate in the past. And so I thought, this is a great opportunity. I liked working with her. This was back in the early 90s, 93, 94. And so, when I got together with her, very quickly I realized I'm an agent. I'm really great with people. I love the job. Assistant work took a backseat, and I just became a real estate agent. And about, what was it, 5, 6, 7 years later, I just decided to open my own company. And I was encouraged by my brother-in-law, who was a mentor of mine, and my mom, who was a mentor of mine. And I just said, why not? And if I had known all the challenges that would come with it, I might not have done it. I think there was a lot of ignorance on this. How hard could it be? You open an office, you buy a few signs and lock boxes, you cut out the middleman, you keep all that money for yourself and happily ever after. And of course, that's not how it worked. But I learned along the way how to grow and get agents and get assistants. I went through a lot of challenging times, like the real estate crash of '08, which, I had 15 agents working for me at the time, and they all disappeared overnight. I couldn't afford the overhead of the office anymore, so I shut the office down and started working from home. It was a dark time for the empire. Yeah. And I kind of just worked through it, waited, survived, did deals from home. Then I got an assistant, and then I got another, and then I got an agent and another, and it started growing again. But this time it was different, because this time I wasn't interested in just repeating the pattern of, hey, why not open an office? Why can't I do this? And it was fun watching that office grow the first time around. Watching our numbers grow, I was producing less and less and becoming a manager, and I had all these agents showing up and working hard. I mean, it was a real fun experience. But I don't think I had any deep purpose behind it other than see how big I could grow it, make as much money as I could. My focus was very much on that one task. Now, after a few years of working from home and doing just getting by, I had to develop some other focal points. And as I had been in coaching off and on all these decades, I realized that I had grown through a lot of adversity. I had grown through a lot of humbling, a lot of financial challenges that came after the crash. I was $100,000 in debt, and my credit was destroyed, and I was behind with the IRS. I was behind with child support. The child support was based on higher numbers than, when I was making money. Now I wasn't making any money, and I
heard that's a bitch to change. I heard.
Well, you got to show up and make it change. And I was just too head in the sand with my problems to go and be proactive to fix any of these things that were spiraling. I probably could have eliminated a lot of trouble for myself if I had just stayed focused on the priorities. But I was kind of in that downward spiral state that, who cares? Nothing matters. Everything sucks. That dark place. So in about 2013, my daughter came to me and said she wanted to work with me. And she had been a riding instructor for about 5 years with her own business. So she understood being in business. And she was working with parents of the kids she taught. They were asking her to help buy horses, pick them out, and advise. And then they were asking her if they would help her look at the farms they were buying. And we looked at each other and said, why aren't you doing that for money? Get a real estate license. So she started working with me then, and then it was another assistant and another agent. But right about then, I decided to take on my financial situation. I've always been a good real estate agent. I've always been able to make money at it. But once I get that money, I wasn't real good at handling it. And the story in my life was, Dave's not very good with money. He's real good at selling homes, and he's really good at being a leader. He's not good with money. And that was a story that I bought into. And there was plenty of evidence for it. My wife and I were having some trouble back then, and we got evidence. How was that?
No, I said you said plenty of evidence for it.
An orgy of evidence, if you will. And the funny thing is, I had a great story about it. Like, my wife would be very horrified if we got behind on the bills a few months. Like, they were going to take our propane tank away once, and because we hadn't paid the bill in so long. And I was like, no problem. We'll just rob from Peter to pay Paul. I'm really good at this. Don't stress out. I know I can make a lot of money in a short span when my back's up against the wall. So don't worry about it. And I always did pull one out in the end. So I figured no problem. Except there was a problem. The enormous amount of stress it caused in my relationship. And unbeknownst to me, it was causing stress in my own being. I didn't like it. I didn't like being behind on bills, borrowing money from family, always paying it back, but still the whole, why do I want to live this way? So this coach that I was working with at the time, not a business coach, mind you, just someone we had brought in to work on our couples relationship, couples counseling. She helped me identify that my relationship to money was not healthy. It wasn't working for me, and it wasn't helping in the stress in our relationship. In fact, we identified my relationship to money with a sentence, a verbal sentence, but also my sentence to financing. If you get that, like you're sentenced to a prison term. Mm-hmm. I was sentenced to a certain relationship with money, and it was always going to show up that way until I saw it and changed it. And the name we gave that was Life on the Edge. And that was so me. Wow. It was so dramatic, and it was almost something, a label I was proud of. Like, that's right, baby. Life on the edge. I'm a bad boy.
Sounds cool.
Get on the back of my motorcycle. We'll ride. But after the fun and games of it all, that was a terrible relationship to money. It was gut-wrenching, and it was something that I just learned to cope with. So she helped me. I asked her to help me change my sentence to finances. And it was the most boring, unsexy things that I'd have to do, the baby steps, the priorities. What am I doing today? What's your priority? Consistent income. Okay, then that's what you're doing. Yeah, but I have that. That's not your priority. Take care of this, you go to that. It was not rocket science. It was simple, but it wasn't easy because I was 45 years one way, and suddenly I'm forcing myself to go completely a different way. Remember, I don't like working for people. I don't like jobs. I don't like having to go open and then stock the shelves and then do this and then do that. I hated that. But that's what I had to embrace to change my finances around. And I did. And in short order, I had paid down debt. I had savings. I repaired my credit. I worked off those big debts, and I was able to finally be able to function like a person and buy my own property, which was something that my wife and I had dreamed of doing. And I was like, never going to happen, never going to happen. And now I was able to see that possibility and realize that dream. So that part of the rebuilding of my career, and that was one of many, careers don't just go like this. There's a lot of ups and downs in a career. A lot of times you'll wonder if this is the business for you. When I finally got through major adversity, it was like a high. And I've had financial ups and downs and problems, and we've had some very challenging real estate markets in the last few years. But I've never fallen back into that life on the edge. I've always been able to see what was coming 6 months, a year ahead, prepare for it, tighten the belt, double down on the spending, reorganize my life, assess and adapt. And I feel like that, that wasn't a change in my life. That was a transformation, because it's never gone back again. Now I deal with a lot of agents who are financially challenged, and I have people I'm dealing with who have a lot of doubt. Is this for me? A lot of this negative self-talk. I can share with them from experience what it's like to go through all that and come out shining on the other side, high on life, and just proud of being able to turn that around. And you don't get those highs, and you don't get that pride. And I'm not talking about, the pride, like pride goeth before the fall. I'm talking about, I love who I am and what I'm capable of, and I want them to know that's there for them as well. You got to kind of have to embrace some of that adversity. So my purpose in real estate now is not the same purpose as it was when I started out. When I started out, I'm like, can I sell a house? Can I do that consistently? Can I make $50,000 in a year? Can I make 100? Can I make 200? Those were the questions I was always challenging myself with. Now, the purpose I have is continuing to grow myself and find those dark places where I can transform and share that and pass that on to other people who are asking for that. And I've gotten to see some real transformation in my team in the last 3 to 5 years. That's made me enormously proud of myself, but also excited about how holding that space and focus can make a difference outside of yourself, and that you can see it ripple effect. And I get very high on that when people engage in our weekly meetings and we're looking at, okay, where are you stuck? But where are your barriers? What are you dealing with? And I've got a very transparent team that are like, well, let me tell you what I'm dealing with. And the tears come and it's this and it's that. And how do I cope with all the pain in the world? I mean, people are dealing with some stuff and I love it. And we get to hear about it. Everyone's nodding and relating to the problem. And then we get to take another perspective because I'm trained in this now. I've been coached off and on for various companies, Landmark Education, Buffini and Associates, my own personal guru, life coach that helped me during the dark years. I have had so much training in this that as soon as I hear someone having a breakdown where they're not feeling like they're taking it on, they don't feel free in their lives, they don't have any power, they're not really able to be their true selves, and they're dealing with all this negativity, I can coach them through that. And in one 10-minute session, we can just take out all that inauthentic nonsense and bullshit and self-talk and give them the room to breathe and realize there's nothing wrong. There's just a bunch of circumstances and you have every opportunity to flourish. So I am constantly inspired by what I'm doing. Like every day is a new day, every day dealing with some new variables. There's no same old, same old. If you'd have told me 25 years ago that I'd have a company that would last 25 years, I'd say, you're nuts, because I'm a free spirit. I go where the wind blows, baby. I can't be tamed and I won't be tied down to one, all that talk. It's like when you really are looking at life in its totality and you're opened up to what spirit brings to the table, there is no day that's the same as the next day. Everything's new, everything's different, and there's opportunity in almost every single day that comes along, and it's a joy.
Wow.
So I don't know if I circled around to the whole thing, but there you go. That's why I'm in real estate. And it doesn't matter if it's real estate. If I was in retail, if I was in insurance, if I was making screen, what's that called? When you make the t-shirts, the screen printing.
Screen printing.
I could make a business doing that and be totally happy, because you're going to end up dealing with all the same variables, the self-talk, the down days, the who am I in all of this, and what do I bring to the world? I believe you could do anything. And I've had people who've come to me with, I need a career change. And I'm like, you don't need a career change. You need an attitude change.
Oh man, it's the attitude, right? Thank you for saying what you're saying as far as like about the adversity and you changing your mindset. Because let me tell you, from the outside looking in, how many, just to quantify this point, how many team members do you have right now?
Team members, about 15.
Wow.
Which is where I was last time. I would say 8 of them are active agents. And then I have operations manager, a marketing coordinator, an assistant. So all told right now about 15. And by the end of this year, we expect to have about 6 more producing agents, which is one of the reasons why we bought this new office space.
Wow, that's incredible. Like I was saying, from the outside looking in, you'd be like, oh man, Dave's got it. Dave's got it made. Dave is freaking got this big team, this new big office. And even it's interesting. I was at the movie theater in Yelm, and I saw an ad for your company, and I saw you with your team, and you had shared a little bit of your story with me. And I was very inspired by that, because there's a huge team. And I was just like, man, I wish people can know the story behind Dave, the story that I know. And I was curious if you wouldn't mind sharing with the audience, has there ever been a moment where you considered walking away from it all, and what pulled you back, if there was any one incident?
Well, not so far this morning. No, I've had many moments that come up. I think it's a natural thing that people don't think is healthy, but it is, where you put things into perspective in a different way and say, why am I doing this? I mean, the unexamined life is someone who gets up and does the same job every day, never questions anything. I mean, they might make a good worker, maybe even a good employee, but they're not creating a whole lot. They're just obeying. And I've been real resistant to that. But there are times when I feel like I'm going through motions and what's happening here. A couple of times, just examples of when that would come up. Well, as you know, the most recent time, I lost one of my kids this year. She was adult child, my daughter, Shelby, and it was tough. She had a couple of kids that we've gotten our arms around and they're doing great. And the family's doing great. And I'm doing great. But for a couple of months there, I was like lost. And not just from grief, but that perspective shift. I don't think I was putting words to it, but life's short. Life can be very short. And I had to take a fresh look at why I was doing what I was doing in my life, because none of the reasons mattered anymore. A profound loss will do that to you. It will change your perspective and make you question everything. Why do I have these clothes? Why am I buying this building? Things were fine. But I think those moments of doubt or uncertainty are important, because it gives you the opportunity to choose again. You know, some people grow up in a religion. Their parents were Methodist, they're Methodist, they're going to get married by a Methodist preacher, and there's no questioning it. But you know, everyone should probably take a moment and question everything in their lives at some point and say, I'm my own person. Just because I grew up with this, just because this is the way it always was, doesn't mean it always has to be. And they should go on a little journey. If they do, and they come back to a faith that really works for them, and it may be the faith of their family of origin, they get to be much more powerful in that faith because they've chosen it freely rather than have it dumped on them by default. And so I've probably had, over the 32 total years of real estate, I've probably had 6 or 7 profound moments of, do I want to do this? I'm getting older. It's not too late to change careers. Do I want to do the same thing every year? And in each of those moments, I think I probably had a real growth opportunity and kind of bumped me up to the next level of my business. But it doesn't have to be anything huge and profound. In March and April of this year, just this past year or so, a year ago, I was starting to get a little burnout. And I had grown my team, and I felt like there was improvement there. I could see more focus on the business. I could see people getting out of their own way. The coaching was working. My transactions were doing fine. And again, we're talking about in a very flat real estate market, I was holding my own. I had luckily put savings aside. But I was at a place, as many agents will find themselves at in a small real estate company, where they're the team leader of 5 to 20 people. They call this Death Valley for a real estate broker manager, because you have a lot of people to mentor, take care of, oversee, manage, inspire. And you also have to sell homes because you're one of the producers.
Right.
Now, agents who have 40, brokers who have 40 agents and more, they don't have to sell homes. They just have to manage and inspire and help. And that's a great place to be. But I have not been there in many years. I was there kind of before the real estate crash. And that feeling of starting over can feel like an exhaustive place to be. It's like, not again. But if you look at it as a new opportunity, I got to be a virtual office with no overhead from 2009 till September. But back in April and May, I was kind of in the doldrums again of, okay, great, we have this virtual office and it's doing well. We're getting by and we're growing a little bit every year, even in the tough times, while other real estate offices are closing. We pushed forward. We dumped a lot of money into a new marketing plan. We invested in ourselves. But I felt like the next level for me was to be able to recruit real producing agents to help just make this place more profitable. And I always felt a little like uncomfortable recruiting agents when I don't have a brick and mortar office. Is it crucial to have a brick and mortar office as a real estate agent? No. Most agents never go into the office. Not like when I had to work from home in 2009, which was like this mark of shame. Almost all real estate agents are working from home. Half the real estate offices seem to be going towards a virtual model because why pay for the brick and mortar? And it almost feels like it's a step into the past and going backwards to even consider it. But I just had this instinct that something big like that was needed. I either needed to dive into the deep end of the pool and get to the next level, or take a step back, because doing 6 jobs wears you out eventually. And I think that as much energy as I have, that's what was happening. And I can't be a top producer when I'm managing 10 other people. And I can't be a great manager when I have to sell homes. And there's a bunch of other things I'm doing too. And nothing feels very satisfying. I'm not doing anything great. Not to mention I've got this little mini farm that has become like a jungle of lawlessness, and the chickens are taking over. I mean, I'm not able to even spend the time at home doing the fun things that you're supposed to do when you get to a certain point. So I was just a little burnout, and I dropped into a bookstore on my way to an appointment. And I know the bookstore owner, and he introduced me to this young man who leads a writer's group. And I've always wanted to write. And I've always been told by people I'm a good writer. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have the time. And they invited me to come that night to their writer's group, and I did. And I started writing from that point on. I went to the meetings once a week. I wrote a book last summer.
What?
In 2 months. I know, right? My daughter and I had always talked about writing this certain kind of fantasy book, and I did. And I was super proud of it. It's being edited right now, but that wasn't even the most amazing part. One of the gentlemen at this writers group has a absolutely undeniable connection with entities, other people, like angels. Not to put a fine point on it, but he dreams of angels every night, and his catharsis is coming and writing and making videos about them and sharing them with the group. And he's an extraordinary human. And I mean, there was no question from the day I met him, he's not crazy. He's wide open.
Gifted.
And he shared with me one day, after a couple of months of knowing him, that he had a message for me from one of these angels. I'm like, I'm all ears, tell me. And I don't even remember the name of the angel, but the details of it was, it is very important to bring money into your presence, into your circle, into your space. And launder it was the word, not like drug cartels launder money, but like to put your frequency on this money and then send it away again, making sure you always take your 8%. I always thought that was interesting, 8%. Is that a universal standard? Is that the amount of money people should demand for themselves and not be greedy about it? I don't know what it all meant, but I got a visual immediately that this was speaking to where I was at, that I needed to be comfortable in taking that investment. And it was right about that time I was looking at this building in town, not seriously, more like it would be nice. Should I, shouldn't I? A little bit of a contemplation. And when I heard that message, I allowed it to direct me. I felt right. It felt like it was a message for me, and it felt like it was telling me to take the next step. So I didn't even know if I could buy the building, but I made a loan with the Small Business Association. And after a couple of months, it was mine. I mean, I had to jump through a bunch of hoops for it, but it went much smoother than I thought it was going to, just because I was willing to take the chance. And, having a brick and mortar building so I could recruit agents was just one part of it. It has elevated our profile in town and around the county with our clients. We've gotten so much business just from making this investment. Wow. Not to mention every agent in my office who have heard horror stories about the real estate market. They see agents leaving the business. They see loan officers leaving the business. Offices around the county and the country closing. Real estate was down 25%. We lost 25% of our sales in the industry nationwide 2 years in a row. That is hard to survive, but I've survived worse. So, surviving hardships is a strength. And my agents could see that I was struggling. They were struggling. We were all struggling. But what are you going to do? I decided it was time to go big or go home. And I already worked from home. So I guess it was time to go big.
Time to go big.
To go big. So that's where we ended up where we are right now.
Wow. You brought up something that kind of struck a memory for me. One of the things that I was really inspired by you when we met, you brought up your daughter passing just now, and when we met, I think it had only been a month. And I remember this was during a ceremony, and I remember laying there and saying, "Oh my God, Dave!" Like, I never would have thought it, right? And I'm not saying like this is the way a person should be, or this is the way a person should act when they're going through that. But I was inspired by you because you couldn't tell, and you were loving, you're very warm, you're very welcoming. And I mean, for months I've been thinking, like, what is that? How? Because I can't fathom that.
No, I know. And I couldn't either. Look, I can't watch movies where a kid is in danger or dies. Like it's my Achilles heel. Any dad, it's their Achilles heel. Mm-hmm. And you're a father of daughters. Mm-hmm. And I know there's challenges with that too. So of course you're on the edge of that panic of what if something happens to my kids?
And was definitely there in that moment when we met.
So I don't know if I shared this with you. I'm going to share a little bit now. You and I both know about plant medicine ceremonies. Mm-hmm. I've done a lot of spiritual work, 10 years in the Ramtha School, retreats, my own disciplines at home that I would off and on go through. I've been pretty lax about it lately. Meditation, focus work, that kind of thing. And I've had phenomenal phenomena. I've had manifestations galore. I mean, you think of something and it's there. I've put my spiritual practice to use in a very practical way. But a couple of years ago, I got introduced to plant ceremonies, ayahuasca in particular, and I've enjoyed getting insights into myself, connecting with my higher self, connecting with spirit, getting instruction, which is something I didn't expect I would get with such clarity. So about 9 months ago, I was at an ayahuasca ceremony, and the 2 days before, I had met a woman in town who had lost a child in a very horrible way. 10 years ago, she had a 2-year-old daughter who got run over by a car in their driveway. It was an accident. Family friend was backing out of the driveway. And when I heard that story, I remember hearing that story when I lived in Yelm, and it happened in Tenino, but I didn't know the people, but I just remember turning to my wife and saying, I don't think I could live through that. I remember saying, I think I could survive just about any tragedy, except if I lost a baby in that way. I don't know how you'd go on. And pretty much everyone I shared that with who has kids is like, no, that's impossible. I remember seeing a statue of two people sitting on a park bench, and one of them had an enormous hole here. And it was a parent who lost a child, because you always have this hole. And it's so profound and it's so deep. I've lost parents, I've lost aunts and uncles, I've lost friends of the family. I even lost a sister, which was probably the most impactful thing that happened to me, because we were on the same generation, the same level. We were friends. We cared deeply for each other. But nothing compares to losing a child. And now, I hadn't lost a child back then, and I couldn't imagine it. So flash forward 10 years, I'm living in Tenino. I meet the woman where we just were introduced, and we're having this chat. She has a foundation called Raise for Rowan. So she took her grief and created a foundation to help people pay for funeral costs and counseling for losing a child. Well, I mean, what a beautiful way to deal with grief is to turn it into a positive. And 10 years later, she still feels that loss every day, but she has a new child and she's thrown herself into her work. And she was just on the edge of pulling away from the foundational work. She felt it was time to let other people take it over. And there's, of course, the whole journey there for her. So we had this fascinating conversation. We had just met, but we made a real impact on each other. 2 days later, I'm at my ayahuasca ceremony, getting deep into the medicine, and suddenly this little girl comes up in my face. I knew who it was right away. It was this little girl who had passed. And she said,
Rowan, right?
Rowan.
Yeah.
Rowan. And she said she had a message for her mother. Like, okay. And it was very specific. She said she knew her mom had been yearning to be with her, as you would imagine. But she wanted her mom to know there's no time where she is. She's living, and she said this twice, so I would get it. She's living her best badass life. She used those words, and I chuckled because this little 2-year-old with blonde hair is saying she's living her best badass life, and that there is no rush for her mom to be with her because there's no time. And that she sent her next baby to tether her here to finish her work so she wouldn't leave too soon. Now, after hearing that message, I was kind of shocked. And the next day after the ceremony, I'm like, I can't call that woman. Tell her I heard from her dead baby.
Yeah.
But I felt very compelled to do it. And just like I said earlier, that bull in the china shop where I'm that guy. Sometimes I'm just that guy and I just got to accept it. So I called her. She remembered me from 3 days ago. And I said, look, I was at a spiritual ceremony. I think I got a message from your daughter. If you're not interested in hearing it, I totally understand. She said, hold on. She came back. She said, I just put a movie on for my baby. I have a notebook and a pen. I'm ready.
Oh, wow.
Now, I don't know this woman's background. I know a lot of people around here are very traditionally Christian in their religions. And sometimes these things can be very shocking, offensive, upsetting, blasphemy. I don't know where she's coming from. But I shared with her exactly what I shared with you. She wrote it all down. She said, it makes perfect sense. That's exactly how she was. She hit the nail on the head. No, I had thoughts. She said, I had my moments where I wasn't sure if I wanted to be here anymore, but I'm absolutely committed to being here. I have a beautiful life now. And I was really glad I had called her. And I know that she was delighted to have heard this message. She said she got a few other messages from other people before, and this was very important to her. So that's what I thought was the end of it, was just a really interesting story that I got to share with someone. And then it was about 5 months later that my daughter passed. And I will tell you, the very first thing I thought of was that little girl. If I hadn't had that experience where I got the message exactly, my daughter's not gone. She is somewhere else where there is no time. And I don't have to worry about that. We'll be together again. I'll see her again. She's still here in many ways that we can't see and necessarily experience the normal way.
Wow.
But make no mistake, I was a hot mess for about, I would be fine. And then I'm mowing the lawn and just waves of grief and tears were coming. And even today, once in a while, when I think of her, she's never going to come through that door again with a funny story. She's never going to appear to me as who she was in the physical. But that ayahuasca I went to specifically to see if I could connect and commune with Shelby, my daughter, and see if there was anything incomplete with us. And I'm very proud to share nothing but joy. She loved me as a father. She thought I was a great dad. She is off doing many things, including helping heal my family. That's what message that she gave me. And that she is as playful and fun-loving as she ever was. And if I want evidence that things are going okay, her kids are absolutely flourishing. And you can't second guess how these things would go. I think we probably got into practical mode very quickly because we needed to take care of these kids. Mm-hmm. But as soon as we saw they were fine, situated, growing, being more expressive, being more joyful than ever, I think that, I hate to say this is how it was supposed to happen, but I think this is how it was supposed to happen. I don't have the whole picture, but the parts of it I get tell me that I don't know everything. And I'm comfortable knowing I don't know everything, because if I knew everything, I'd say, what kind of bullshit is this?
Yeah.
This young woman had addiction problems, clawed her way out of them, got to be a mom to her kids again after not being able to be, and was getting back integrated into life and work. But there was always something with her that wasn't quite settled with that status quo. Just like me, just doing it because it needed to be done didn't sit with her. Now, I found a way to make my life have meaning and purpose, and get something out of it, and not just be a cog in the machine. I think she couldn't quite figure that out. I think given time, she might have, but I can't second guess her choices to leave, even though it was an accident and it wasn't supposed to happen, and she didn't plan it. We know that. But I used to hate people who'd say, God has a plan and the Lord works in mysterious ways. Because, when you lose a loved one, you're like, or you see suffering and there's children starving, you're kind of like, well, that's a fucked up plan.
Very
I'm
fucked up.
I'm not getting on board with this little axiom you've got there, these platitudes that make everyone feel better. I mean, I really had an attitude about those things that people do and think to bring comfort when they should be dealing with the reality of the situation. But now I see it in a different way. Now I see it as there's a belief structure working in me that I'm not even fully aware of yet. I'm kind of an instrument waiting to see where it goes. But I know that my philosophy of business is the same as my philosophy of life, which is you don't control these circumstances. But when the circumstances happen, who you become in the process of dealing with those circumstances makes all the difference in your reality that is next to be created. And I'm not talking about suppressing feelings or putting on a big smile and acting like everything's okay when it's not. When people ask me how I'm doing since Shelby passed, God bless them. They're like, how are you? We felt terrible. Are you okay? And I feel almost guilty when I'm like, I have never been better. Now, does that mean if I could wave a magic wand and have Shelby here? Damn right I would. I miss her terribly. But the rest of my life didn't stop. And in fact, we think that loss sparked some things with my wife and I in particular. Some of that stuff you never talk about, that's deep down, these little resignations, things aren't ever going to get better than this. And all that stuff exploded in our faces. We had a big breakdown and a huge breakthrough. And gosh, there was a moment there where we thought we were going to break up. No kidding. And we took it head on and said, I'm not settling for that. And she said, I'm not settling for that either. And we dove into each other like we never have before. And we've had a breakthrough in intimacy and closeness in our way of being partners in life. And together, we bought this office and transformed it and decorated it. And we learned to be partners for the first time in 17 years. I don't think that would have happened without the life-changing, perspective-changing loss that we experienced with my daughter in September. So I think life is a miracle. I think it is. There are things going on here we know nothing about. Yeah. But I'm here for the ride and to see where it's all going. And I feel in my bones, in my soul, that it's going somewhere very intentionally. And I'm paying attention. And I don't know what's going to happen next, but it's exciting. And that's something I can live with.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, man. I really appreciate it. It kind of, you were like speaking to my soul. And is there one thing I was thinking, is there any guilt, like when, like going through that, and how do you get through it? If so?
A good question.
And I'm asking that question. Father to father,
Nah, I get you.
For me,
I had gotten married at 19 and my first kid at 20 and Shelby when I was 22. And my wife and I at that time had already separated. Big surprise at getting married so young. And so when Shelby was born, we were already separated. So here I'm having a child not in my, that's going to be growing up in two households. And when I was in that ayahuasca ceremony, I was thinking about that and I got very sad being born, having a broken home is one thing. Starting out a broken home, I felt very guilty about that for a long time. And I said to myself, man, she never had a chance. And I heard her voice loud and clear. And she said, I had every chance. And it made me laugh because she was like, excuse me, don't count me out. And you know what that did for my guilt? It eradicated it, because this was supposed to happen. This was a setup. Did I make mistakes as a young father? All of them. I made all of the mistakes. I mean, just every possible thing that I could have done. I had all the heart in the world, but I know I did a lot of things that if I could do over again, I would do completely different. And I got a chance because I got remarried and I had this little girl who's now 13 years old. And oh man, so many things that I do with her mindfully, from what we watch on TV, for the time we spend together. I'm as busy now as I was then with my kids, but I make the time. And I know it's about quality time, not quantity of time. And I'm there and I listen. I mean, I do so many things that I did okay then, but I could do better now. And some things I just did terribly then, and just self-importance of I have to work, the stress of young parents and women and men alike, that they have to go do jobs and then come home and squeeze it all into this small period of time and try to do it. I mean, they're heroes. They're heroes. And I don't care how bad you fucked up, you're still a hero. And I can look at my younger self now and say, dude, you did the best you could with what you had. No question about it. That doesn't mean I'm not going to keep learning. Hell, I've made some mistakes with this kid. Like, by my 19th kid, I'm going to have this down.
Yeah.
But as far as the guilt of survivor's guilt of being happy after I've lost my daughter, I check in with her with my thoughts. I'm like, how do you want me to handle this? And in no uncertain terms, she wants us to live joyfully every moment. She doesn't want us to think of her as a tragedy. She wants us to think of her as the best of her, which was her humor, her quirkiness, her individuality. I saw a meme that I had to show to her kids, who are 9 and 11. And it was a mother, and she had her 2 kids, and they were playing some sort of ridiculous game. And she said, I am an evil leader, and these are my 2 minions. I've made them myself. And, that's so her. She wanted friends, and her kids were her best friends. And she was a great mom in the sense that she loved them and wanted to be with them all the time. And I think that if you could say that what didn't work for her was this whole concept of going to work and paying bills and trying to earn savings and doing all the life things when all she really wanted to do was hang out with her kids all the time. And to look at that objectively, I'd say she's right. Mm-hmm. That's stupid. And I don't know when we became that society, because it wasn't always like that, but she's not wrong. Something didn't work for her there. And I think after a while, she realized that she wasn't up for it. And that's okay. When she passed, I went to the house where she was, and they had brought her out on a gurney, and she was covered up. And I chose not to look at her because I didn't want to remember her that way.
Yeah.
But I got to say something to her that was a long time coming, because when my sister passed, I never got to say it to her. But again, it was another ayahuasca ceremony that told me there was a communication that I needed to give to my sister. And I did. And it completed something for us in that ayahuasca ceremony. So right there, fresh on the spot, I said to Shelby, standing over her body, knowing her spirit was hovering somewhere, believing so, I said, you can only ever make me proud. You can never disappoint me. You've done the absolute best you could, and I want you to know no one thinks that you failed them. No one is disappointed in you. We love you. We're grateful that you got to be a mom to your kids, and you're going to be with us forever, but you've done your best. And that was a communication that I want to have with everyone in my life. And once I learned how healing that is, when I had that come up with my sister, I didn't know I had anything incomplete with her. We loved each other. Everything was great. But she always felt like she was disappointing us, not staying on top of her health, not staying on top of her finances. She'd always be like, I know I could do better. It was always a air of disappointment. And I fed into that because every time I went to visit her, I'd start out as Mr. Unconditional, and that would last about 5 minutes. I'm like, well, how you feeling? Is this cigarette butts? Are you smoking? Is that Taco Bell? You know what that will do to your condition. She'll be in bed for 4 days over that. And suddenly I'm Mr. Judgmental. Yeah. But it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. She was geared towards disappointing people and being a disappointment. So the healing aspect that she needed to hear was, you can only ever make me proud. And I worked my way around in the ceremony and shared that with everybody in the room at some point, and it all landed with them like, yes, thank you. They're crying. Like, I don't even know what they're going through. But you can only ever make me proud is such a profound. And I know I was supposed to tell her the same message, and I did. You can only ever make me proud. And I said that over and over until I felt this energy release. I mean, imagine if we could go back to our parents or our grandparents and in like Inception, plant an idea in their head that would change the course of their life. What could be more powerful than you can only ever make me proud? So many people live their lives constantly feeling like they're disappointing or letting down their parents or God or somebody. So this healing tool, all night long, these visions of ancestors of mine that I've never even met have come up. I just went through and I said those words to everybody that came to my mind until hours later, I was finally able to stop. But it's like, it was like a healing of a downline of ancestry. And I don't know what effect that had on the world, but I could only imagine it was for the positive.
Dude, beautifully said, dude. This is so good. And I really appreciate you for this. You're helping so many people right now. I don't even think, this conversation goes way beyond real estate. This is the stuff that I feel like not a lot of leaders are talking about, especially in your position. So, man, I really want to tell you, man, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you sharing not just your story of leadership, but the things that you've been going through. I definitely don't take it lightly. I was going to ask you, for the folks that are going through some things and need to overcome, maybe they're in leadership like you are, the real estate agents or whatever they're doing, do you have any closing message for them so that they can keep going?
Yeah. If I had one message, it would be share your failures and your shame, because you don't know how many people need to be able to relate with that. I mean, share your successes too. Celebrate your wins. Be proud of them. But don't be afraid to share your dark moments and that they aren't all in the past. We have more darkness coming. It's how you spread light in the world. You got to find the dark recesses of yourself. And it comes up in really different ways, You share the darkness, and then people get to come on your journey of transformation, and then they get to enjoy your successes with you. And then they can see for themselves what's possible instead of just, hey, here's this hyper jack dude that's all into, feeling the burn and synergy. That's not who I am. I'm not a rah-rah. I never was. So I think the more I share authentically myself, the more benefit it is for other people. If I had two things that I could tell everybody, the second one would be, you can only ever make me proud.
Thank you, Dave. This has been great. I really, really, really appreciate you doing this. And again, Sharon, this has been so good for my soul. So thank you, buddy.
You are welcome, Tony. I pride myself on being a great judge of people. I don't mean good and bad judge. I mean, when I see someone is up to something, I see a spark in them. And I mean, you and I were there. We met face to face one night. We're both dealing with heavy life challenges.
Oh, yeah.
And we went through this very bonding plant ceremony together. And it was only one night. And I knew right away. I went home and I said, that Tony, he's something. I said, we're going to do something together. I don't know what it's going to be, but this is a guy I want to be around and I want to know. I want to know people like that. I get to pick and choose in my life right now who I want to spend my time with. And no judgment, but there's some people not that interested in spending time with, whether they're, committed to their issues or negative or just always looking to bring someone down. I mean, there's no space in my life for that. And as a result, very few people show up on my doorstep like that. Most people that I'm drawing into my life now are people like you and some of our mutual friends like Daryl and Keziah and Maxime. I mean, these are people who are elevating the planet in their own way.
Beautiful.
Every one of us is trying to make a difference somewhere, starting with ourselves. So thank you for choosing me to interview in your podcast. And I'd love to do this again sometime.
Heck yeah. Let's do it, man. I'm down. And I was going to tell you, when I met your wife, man, she is a beautiful being. When I met her, I was just like, man, she is amazing. And yeah, man, I love both of you guys. And again, man, thank you for doing this. And for the folks that are listening, the folks that are watching, please make sure that you go and you give this episode some love. If you got something out of it, please make sure to like, follow, subscribe to the podcast, leave us a positive review. Go to, if you're local, or even if you're not local, go and visit Dave Champagne's website. Go and visit him on social media. Tell him how much you love this show, how much it inspired you. I know it inspired me. I could not contain myself. It's just been one of those mornings. So please give Dave the love. What can they find you at, Dave?
Well, like you said, Facebook's great. You can go to Castle Realty page on Facebook and contact us. You can look up Dave Champagne. I'll always accept your friend's request. And our company has a singular philosophy of doing business by referral. So yes, our mission statement is to promote financial peace of mind through homeownership and real estate investment, but it's also to create a thriving community of mutual appreciation. We do a lot for the community. Individually, the business community, the retail businesses, the service businesses. We have a great directory of businesses that we vet and interview to make sure that they're solid before we refer them out to our clients. So you can call us for any real estate advice, any referral. If you know someone buying or selling a home, there is nobody we don't want to talk to. Even if you think, I don't know, they probably can't buy a house, their credit, they don't have the income. We talk to people, anybody. If we cannot help them immediately, we'll point them in the right direction. We'll stay in touch with them over time. And we'll ask them to refer to us as well. You won't see us advertising outside of the movie theater, but we do our advertising through our own sphere and just constantly remind people we're here for whatever you need. And here's what we need. We need your real estate referrals. So if you keep that in mind, Dave Champagne, Castle Realty, Facebook's the best place to find us.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Tony.
That was great. If you enjoyed this podcast, well, I'm sure you enjoyed it. If you're still here with us, what I want you to do is head over to your favorite podcast and streaming network and give us a download, subscribe to the channel, and also let us know what you think about the show. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you for the things that you've done. Thank you for the things that you're doing. And especially thank you for the things that you're going to do, because I know that you're going to do something amazing.
Remember, I'm here to stand by you as you chase your dreams, lead with greatness, and continue to make a difference. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so that you can be notified every time we drop a new episode. I'll see you next time on Leaders Lead the Podcast. Peace.